The sun burned mercilessly over Clifton, Arizona, as Zara Galloway stood trembling in the dusty street, her few possessions scattered around her feet and tears streaming down her dirt-smudged face. The year was 1878, and at 22, she had just been thrown out of the only home she had known for the past year, with the landlord's cruel words still ringing in her ears. No rent, no roof. That's the last time I trust a schoolteacher's promise. "Please, Mr. Harrington," she begged, gathering her skirts around her to kneel in the dirt, dignity forgotten in her desperation. "My wages are just delayed. The school board promised. Your promises don't pay my bills." Harrington spat on the ground near her worn boots. "Get your things and get out. I've got paying tenants waiting." The small crowd that had gathered to witness her humiliation began to disperse, no one offering help. Zara's hands shook as she tried to gather her scattered belongings, books that were her most prized possessions, a small photograph of her parents, both gone now, and the meager clothing she owned. The school had closed unexpectedly when the town council redirected funds toward expanding the mining operations, leaving her without the wages she'd been counting on. "Need a hand with those, madam?" The voice was deep and gentle, coming from above her. Zara looked up, squinting against the harsh sunlight to see a tall figure standing over her. As her eyes adjusted, she could make out a man with broad shoulders, dressed in trail-worn clothes and a dusty cowboy hat. His face was partially shadowed by the brim, but she could see kind eyes studying her with concern. "I'm fine," she said automatically, though she was anything but. Pride was all she had left. The man knelt down beside her, gathering some of her books that had fallen open in the dirt. "Looks to me like you might be having a rough day." He handed her a leather-bound copy of Pride and Prejudice, carefully brushing the dust from its cover. "You could say that," Zara replied, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. She took the book from him, their fingers brushing briefly. His were calloused but gentle. "Name's Samuel Irwin," he said, continuing to help gather her scattered possessions. "Most folks call me Sam." "Zara Galloway," she responded, watching cautiously as he picked up her mother's hand mirror and wrapped it carefully in a handkerchief before returning it to her. "School teacher, right? I heard about what happened with the school." His voice carried no judgment, just a simple acknowledgement of facts. "Where will you go now?" The question hit her like a physical blow. Where indeed? She had no family, no friends close enough to impose upon, and now no job and no home. She swallowed hard against the lump forming in her throat. I don't know." Sam stood, dusting off his hands on his worn jeans. He looked down at her for a long moment as if weighing something in his mind. Then decisively he extended his hand. "Come with me," he said simply. Zara stared at the outstretched hand, suspicious. In her experience, men didn't offer help without expecting something in return. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "I know enough," he replied. "I know you're in trouble and need a hand. I've got a small ranch about 10 miles outside of town. My sister lives there too. You can stay until you figure things out." He kept his hand extended, patient. "Your sister," Zara repeated, relief washing over her at the mention of another woman. Sam nodded. "Rebecca. She's been complaining about needing help with the house and the accounts. She'd welcome the company, and you'd have a roof over your head. Seems like a fair arrangement to me." Zara looked around the dusty street. A few townsfolk still watched from a distance, including Mr. Harrington, who stood in the doorway of his boarding house with his arms crossed and a satisfied smirk on his face. She had nowhere to go, no prospects, and night would fall soon enough. Taking a deep breath, she placed her hand in Sam's. His grip was firm but gentle as he helped her to her feet. "Thank you," she said quietly, brushing dust from her skirts. "Don't thank me yet," he said with a small smile. "It's a long ride, and Rebecca can be pricklier than a cactus when she's in a mood. Let me help you with your things." Sam gathered most of her belongings into a sack he produced from his saddlebag, then led her to where his horse was hitched outside the general store. The chestnut mare eyed Zara warily as Sam secured her belongings. "This is Penny," he said, patting the horse's neck. "She's sturdy enough to carry us both to the ranch." He glanced at Zara's worn boots and simple dress. "Have you ridden before?" "A little," she admitted. "Not recently." Sam nodded, then helped her mount before swinging up behind her. The closeness of his body made Zara tense, but there was nothing improper in how he held himself, maintaining as much distance as the saddle would allow while still ensuring she was secure. "Hold on," he instructed, and they set off down the main street of Clifton, past the saloon and the mining company office, toward the open landscape beyond. As they rode away from town, Zara caught a glimpse of her reflection in a storefront window, a woman with nowhere to go, sitting in front of a stranger who had offered his hand when no one else would. She didn't know what awaited her at Sam Irwin's ranch, but it had to be better than what she was leaving behind. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon as they made their way across the rugged landscape. The air was hot and dry, but the movement of the horse created a slight breeze that offered minimal relief. Zara's back was rigid with tension, trying to maintain proper distance from the man behind her. "You can relax a bit," Sam said after they'd been riding in silence for some time. "Penny knows the way home. I won't let you fall." "I'm fine," Zara replied automatically, though her muscles were already aching from the unaccustomed posture. "Suit yourself," he said, and she could hear a smile in his voice. "But it's a long ride yet." Gradually, as the miles passed, Zara found herself relaxing slightly. Sam kept a respectful distance, and his presence behind her became less threatening, more reassuring. He occasionally pointed out landmarks or shared brief stories about the land they passed through. "See that rock formation?" he asked, gesturing to a series of red stones jutting up from the earth. "Apache legend says it's the petrified remains of a giant who tried to steal the sun." "Is that true?" Zara asked, momentarily forgetting her predicament in her curiosity. "About the giant?" "No," Sam chuckled, the sound rumbling against her back. "But about the Apache believing it, yes. I learned a lot from them growing up. My pa traded with them before the troubles got worse." "You grew up here?" Zara asked, realizing she knew nothing about this man who had come to her aid. "Born and raised," Sam confirmed. "My parents came out from Tennessee in '51 looking to start fresh. Pa tried mining first, then cattle. The ranch isn't much, but it's been home my whole life." "And your sister? Has she always lived with you?" There was a slight pause before Sam answered. "Rebecca came back after her husband died in the war. She was back east with him, but after, well, she didn't have anywhere else to go." The parallels to her own situation weren't lost on Zara. "That's kind of you to take her in." "She's family," Sam said simply, as if that explained everything. Perhaps for him, it did. The landscape gradually changed as they rode, the flat desert giving way to rolling hills dotted with scrub brush and the occasional twisted juniper. In the distance, Zara could make out the silhouette of mountains against the darkening sky. "Almost there," Sam said as they crested a small hill. Below them, in a shallow valley, sat a modest ranch house with several outbuildings. A corral held a few horses, and a small herd of cattle grazed in a pasture beyond. It wasn't grand by any means, but there was a solidity to it, a sense of permanence that spoke of a home well tended. "It's lovely," Zara said honestly. "It's not much," Sam replied, "but it's ours." As they approached, a woman emerged from the main house, wiping her hands on an apron. She had the same dark hair as Sam, though hers was streaked with gray at the temples, and her stance was wary as she watched them approach. "That's Rebecca," Sam murmured. "Don't mind her frown, it's just her way." He guided Penny to a halt near the house and dismounted first, then helped Zara down. Her legs felt unsteady after the long ride, and she stumbled slightly. Sam's hand caught her elbow, steadying her before letting go immediately. "Samuel Irwin, what have you brought home now?" Rebecca called, her voice carrying a note of exasperation that suggested this wasn't the first time her brother had arrived with an unexpected guest. "Rebecca, this is Miss Zara Galloway," Sam said, leading Penny toward the water trough. "She was the school teacher in Clifton until they closed the school. She needs a place to stay for a while." Rebecca's eyes narrowed as she assessed Zara from head to toe. "The school teacher, and what happened to your lodgings in town?" Zara straightened her spine, determined to meet the woman's gaze directly despite her exhaustion and the humiliation of her circumstances. "I was unable to pay the rent after the school board withheld my wages. Mr. Harrington evicted me this afternoon." Something in Rebecca's expression softened slightly. "Harrington's always been a miserly old goat." She glanced at her brother, who was now unsaddling Penny. "And my soft-hearted brother couldn't leave well enough alone, I suppose." "I can work," Zara offered quickly. "I'm educated. I can help with accounts, correspondence, household duties." Rebecca held up a hand. "No need to sell yourself just yet. Come inside. You look like you could use a wash and a meal. We can talk terms after you've rested." Relief washed over Zara as she followed Rebecca into the house. The interior was simple but clean, with sturdy furniture and a few touches that spoke of a woman's hand-embroidered cushions on the chairs, a vase of wildflowers on the table. "The washroom's through there," Rebecca said, pointing to a door off the kitchen. "There's hot water on the stove. I'll find you something clean to wear. Might be a bit large, but better than dust-covered." "Thank you," Zara said, suddenly overwhelmed by the kindness after the day's events. "I don't know how to repay, save it," Rebecca interrupted, but her tone was gentler now. "Get cleaned up. We'll talk after." Left alone in the small washroom, Zara finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She sank onto a stool and buried her face in her hands, letting a few silent tears fall. The day had been a whirlwind of despair and unexpected kindness, leaving her emotionally exhausted. After composing herself, she washed away the dust and tears, grateful for the hot water and the soap that smelled faintly of lavender. The dress Rebecca provided was indeed too large, but clean and comfortable. When Zara emerged, she found the table set for three, with a simple but hearty meal of stew, bread, and coffee. Sam had come in while she was washing and sat at the table, freshly cleaned himself. He stood when she entered, an old-fashioned courtesy that seemed natural to him. "Feel better?" he asked. "Much, thank you," Zara replied, taking the seat Rebecca indicated. The meal passed with surprisingly comfortable conversation. Rebecca, though initially standoffish, proved to be well-read and articulate. She asked Zara about her education, her teaching experiences, and what books she enjoyed. Sam spoke less but listened attentively, occasionally adding a comment or asking a question. As they finished their coffee, Rebecca finally addressed the practical matters. "We've got a small room off the back porch. It's not much, but it's private. You're welcome to stay there while you decide what comes next." "I appreciate that more than I can say," Zara replied. "And I meant what I said about working. I don't expect charity." "Good, because you won't get it," Rebecca said bluntly, though her eyes had a hint of warmth now. "There's plenty of work to be done around here. Sam handles the cattle and most of the outdoor work. I manage the house and the accounts, but my eyes aren't what they used to be." If you're as educated as you seem, your help would be welcome. Sam watched the exchange with a small smile. Told you she needed help with the accounts. Rebecca shot him a look. Don't get smug, Samuel. She turned back to Zara. We can offer room and board plus a small wage. Not much, but it should help you save something for whatever comes next. It was more than Zara had dared hope for. Thank you, both of you. I'll work hard, I promise. I don't doubt it, Rebecca said, rising from the table. Now let me show you where you'll be staying. As Rebecca led her to the small room, Zara glanced back to see Sam watching them go, his expression thoughtful. When their eyes met, he offered a small nod, as if confirming he stood by his decision to bring her here. The room was indeed small, just enough space for a narrow bed, a chest for her belongings, and a small table with a lamp, but it was clean and private, with a window that looked out toward the mountains. After Rebecca left her to settle in, Zara unpacked her few possessions, placing her books and her parents' photograph on the table. Exhaustion finally caught up with her as she sat on the edge of the bed. The events of the day seemed almost dreamlike now: the humiliation in the street, the cowboy's extended hand, the long ride to this place that might, for a time at least, be a sanctuary. Come with me, he had said, and she had taken a leap of faith. As she drifted toward sleep, Zara wondered what tomorrow would bring in this unexpected new chapter of her life. The first rays of dawn were just breaking over the eastern horizon when Zara woke to the sounds of movement in the main house. Having spent a year in town accommodations, she had almost forgotten the early rhythms of rural life. She dressed quickly in her own clothes, which Rebecca had kindly laundered overnight, and made her way to the kitchen. Rebecca was already there, stoking the stove and measuring coffee grounds. She glanced up as Zara entered, giving a nod of approval at her promptness. "Good morning," Zara said. "Can I help with breakfast?" "Eggs and bacon in the pantry," Rebecca replied. "Sam will be in from the barn soon, hungry as a bear." The two women worked in companionable silence, settling into an easy rhythm. Zara found herself grateful for the practical tasks that kept her mind from dwelling on the uncertainty of her situation. Sam entered just as they were setting the table, bringing with him the sense of fresh air, horses, and hay. He'd clearly been up for hours already, his face showing the healthy flush of physical labor. "Morning," he said, removing his hat and hanging it on a peg by the door. He washed his hands at the basin in the corner before taking his seat. "Sleep well, Miss Galloway." "Yes, thank you," Zara replied, noticing how the morning light caught the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "And please call me Zara. After your kindness, formality seems unnecessary." A small smile touched his lips. "Zara, then." Breakfast was a heartier affair than Zara was accustomed to, with eggs, bacon, biscuits, and strong black coffee. The conversation flowed naturally, with Sam detailing the day's ranch work and Rebecca outlining the household tasks. "I thought perhaps Zara could help me with the accounts this morning," Rebecca said, pouring more coffee, "since that's one of her strengths." "Fine by me," Sam agreed. "I'll be mending the north fence with Joe today, probably won't be back till supper." "Joe?" Zara inquired. "Joe Martinez," Rebecca explained. "He helps around the ranch, lives in a cabin over the ridge with his wife, Maria. They're good people." After breakfast, Sam headed out while Zara helped Rebecca clear the table. Once the kitchen was tidy, Rebecca led Zara to a small room off the main living area that served as an office. A desk stood by the window, covered with ledgers and papers. "I've been falling behind," Rebecca admitted, gesturing to the chaos. "My eyes strain too easily these days, and Sam, bless him, is better with cattle than columns of numbers." Zara surveyed the desk with a teacher's practiced eye for organization. "May I?" At Rebecca's nod, Zara began sorting the papers, quickly identifying invoices, receipts, and correspondence. Rebecca watched with growing approval as Zara established a systematic approach to the chaos. "You're good at this," she observed after a while. "I enjoy order," Zara replied, already immersed in the task. "And numbers tell a story if you know how to read them." They worked through the morning, with Zara organizing and Rebecca explaining the ranch operations, the cattle they raised, the horses they bred, the occasional trade with neighboring ranches and the town. By midday, Zara had a clearer understanding of the Irwins' modest but stable business. "The ranch is doing well," she noted, reviewing the ledgers. "You're careful with your money." "We have to be," Rebecca said, a shadow crossing her face. "Times get lean out here sometimes. Whether rustlers, market prices, any of it can turn against you in a heartbeat." Something in her tone suggested personal experience with such hardships. "How long have you been back here?" Zara asked carefully. Rebecca's gaze turned toward the window, looking out at the land. 8 years now. After Thomas died at Gettysburg, I stayed with his family in Pennsylvania for a while, but they had their own grief, their own burdens. I missed the open sky, the mountains." She paused, then added softly, "I missed home." "I understand homesickness," Zara said. "After my parents died, fever took them both 3 years ago. I had to leave the farm I grew up on in Missouri. Nothing felt like home after that." Rebecca studied her with new eyes, perhaps recognizing a kindred spirit in loss. "And what brought you to Arizona Territory?" "A teaching position," Zara replied. "I'd trained as a teacher before my parents fell ill, and when I saw the advertisement for Clifton, well, it seemed like a chance to start fresh." Was all Rebecca said, but her expression had softened further. They broke for a simple lunch of cold chicken and bread, which they ate at the kitchen table. Afterward, Rebecca showed Zara around the rest of the house and the immediate surroundings, the vegetable garden she tended, the chicken coop, the root cellar, and the wash house. "It's not grand," Rebecca said as they completed their circuit, "but it's honest and it's ours." "It's lovely," Zara replied sincerely. After the uncertainty of yesterday, the solid practicality of the ranch was deeply appealing. The afternoon was spent on household tasks, mending linens, churning butter, preparing vegetables for dinner. Rebecca proved to be a patient teacher, and Zara a quick study. By the time they heard Sam's horse approaching late in the afternoon, they had settled into a comfortable rhythm of work and conversation. "You're a good hand," Rebecca said as they put the final touches on a hearty stew. "I think this arrangement might work out just fine." Coming from the initially reserved woman, it felt like high praise. Zara smiled, feeling a small spark of hope for the first time since losing her teaching position. Sam entered, looking tired but satisfied with the day's work. His eyes found Zara immediately, a question in them. "How was your first day?" "Educational," she replied with a smile. "Your sister's been showing me the workings of the ranch." "And," he prompted, washing up at the basin. "And I believe I'll earn my keep," Zara said confidently. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "Never doubted it." The three of them settled into dinner, joined by Joe Martinez, who had ridden back with Sam to repair a piece of equipment in the barn before heading home. Joe was a stocky man with a weathered face and quick smile, speaking English with a slight accent. He treated Zara with polite respect, clearly taking his cue from the Irwins' acceptance of her presence. As the meal progressed, Zara found herself watching Sam, the easy way he conversed with Joe, the respectful attention he gave his sister, the occasional glances he directed at Zara herself. There was a quiet strength about him, an unassuming confidence that came from knowing exactly who he was and where he belonged. After Joe departed and the dishes were cleared, Rebecca announced she was retiring early. "These old bones need rest," she said, though Zara suspected she was deliberately giving them some time alone. With Rebecca gone, a slight awkwardness descended. Sam leaned back in his chair, regarding Zara thoughtfully. "I hope today wasn't too overwhelming for you." "Not at all," Zara replied. "It feels good to be useful again." "Rebecca seems pleased," Sam observed. "That's no small thing. She doesn't warm to people easily." "She's been very kind," Zara said. "You both have, She paused, searching for words adequate to express her gratitude. "You don't need to thank me again," Sam said gently. "I'm just glad it's working out." A comfortable silence fell between them. Sam's gaze drifted to the window, where the last light of day was fading into dusk. "Before Rebecca came back, I used to sit out on the porch most evenings. Watch the stars come out." He glanced at Zara. "Would you care to join me?" The invitation was simple, yet Zara felt a small flutter in her chest. "I'd like that." The night air was cool after the heat of the day, carrying the sense of sage and distant rain. They sat in rocking chairs on the porch, watching as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the sky. "It's beautiful," Zara murmured, gazing up at the vast expanse above them. "In town, with the lamps and buildings, you don't see them quite like this." "That's one reason I could never live in town," Sam replied. "Too closed in. Out here you can breathe." They rocked gently, the creaking of the chairs a soothing counterpoint to the night sound's crickets, a distant coyote, the occasional snort from the horses in the corral. "May I ask you something?" Zara said after a while. "Of course." "Why did you help me yesterday? Truly?" Sam was quiet for so long that Zara thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and reflective. "I saw something in your face standing there in the street. Not just fear or desperation, though those were there, but a kind of determination. Like you weren't broken, just bent." He paused. I admired that. The simple honesty of his words touched her deeply. "Thank you for seeing that," she said softly. "Sometimes it's hard to feel it myself." "Strength isn't always about feeling strong," Sam replied. "Sometimes it's just about not giving up." They fell silent again, but it was a comfortable silence, filled with the shared understanding of two people who had each faced their own hardships. As the night deepened around them, Zara felt a curious sense of peace settle over her. Yesterday, her world had collapsed around her. Today, she had begun to build something new. And though she didn't know what tomorrow would bring, for this moment, sitting beside this quiet, thoughtful man under a canopy of stars, she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. She felt at home. The days at the Irwin Ranch soon fell into a rhythm. Zara woke each morning with the dawn, helped Rebecca with breakfast, and then divided her time between the household chores and bringing order to the ranch accounts. In the afternoons, she often worked in the vegetable garden, finding unexpected solace in the simple task of nurturing growing things. Sam was a constant presence, though often at a distance, riding out early to check the cattle, mending fences, training horses, or trading with neighboring ranchers. But each evening they would gather for dinner, sharing the events of their day. And afterward, when Rebecca retired, Sam and Zara would sit on the porch, watching the stars and talking. Those evening conversations became the anchors of Zara's days. Sam spoke of his childhood on the ranch, his parents who had passed away several years before, and his time scouting for the army during the conflicts with the Apache. Zara shared stories of her life in Missouri, her brief teaching career, and her dreams of someday opening a school of her own. "You really love teaching, don't you?" Sam asked one evening about 2 weeks after her arrival. "I do," Zara admitted, rocking gently. There's something wonderful about watching a child grasp a new idea that moment when confusion clears and understanding dawns. It's magical. Sam was quiet for a moment, then said, "There are children at the neighboring ranches and a few families of workers like the Martineses. Not enough for a proper school, maybe, but enough to teach," Zara finished, her heart quickening at the idea. "Worth thinking about," Sam suggested with a small smile. The seed planted that night took root in Zara's mind. She began to imagine how she might create a small school, perhaps just a few days a week, for the scattered children of the area. The idea gave her a sense of purpose beyond her immediate circumstances. As May turned to June, the days grew hotter, the landscape more parched. The ranch work intensified as they prepared for the long, dry summer ahead. Zara found herself taking on more responsibilities, learning new skills: how to churn butter, preserve vegetables, even how to shoot a rifle with Sam as her patient instructor. "You've got a good eye," he said approvingly after she hit the target 3 times in a row. "Important skill out here." "I never thought I'd learn to handle a gun," Zara admitted, carefully setting the rifle down as he had taught her. "Lots of things we never expect to learn," Sam replied, his eyes holding hers for a moment longer than usual. "Life has a way of surprising us." Those moments of connection were becoming more frequent. A lingering glance. A hand offered to help her down from the wagon, sitting a little closer on the porch each evening. Zara found herself increasingly aware of Sam's presence, the timbre of his voice, the way sunlight played on his features when he smiled. Rebecca noticed too. One afternoon, as they worked together in the kitchen, she said casually, "My brother seems to enjoy your company." Zara felt her cheeks warm. "We have good conversations," Rebecca hummed noncommittally. "Samuel's always been thoughtful. Even as a boy, he'd sit and consider something from all angles before acting." She paused in her kneading of bread dough. "It made him a good son, a good brother. Would make him a good husband too, for the right woman." The implication hung in the air between them. Zara focused intently on the vegetables she was chopping. "He's been very kind to me." "Kindness is the least of what Samuel has to offer," Rebecca said, then changed the subject, leaving Zara to ponder her words. The following Sunday, a rare day of rest on the ranch, Sam asked if Zara would like to ride with him to see more of the property. Rebecca, citing a headache, declined to join them, though the knowing look she gave Zara suggested her ailment might be conveniently timed. They set out mid-morning, Zara now comfortable enough on horseback to ride Daisy, a gentle mare Sam had been training. The day was clear, the sky a brilliant blue that seemed to stretch forever. "I want to show you my favorite place on the ranch," Sam said as they rode side by side across a meadow dotted with wildflowers. "It's a bit of a ride, but worth it." They climbed gradually through rolling hills, the landscape changing subtly around them: more juniper trees, occasional pines, the air growing slightly cooler as they ascended. After about an hour, Sam led them to a small plateau overlooking a valley. A clear stream ran through it, bordered by cottonwoods whose leaves shimmered silver green in the breeze. "It's beautiful," Zara breathed, taking in the panoramic view of the ranch lands below and mountains beyond. "My father brought me here when I was 10, Sam said, dismounting and helping Zara down. "Told me that someday all this would be my responsibility. I didn't understand what he meant, then thought he was just talking about the cattle and the house." He gazed out over the land. "Now I know he meant something bigger. The land itself, the water, the animals, all of it connected, all of it needing care and respect." They spread a blanket in the shade of a juniper tree, and Sam unpacked the lunch. Rebecca had prepared: cold chicken, bread, cheese, and apple pie. They ate with the healthy appetite that comes from riding in the open air, talking easily about the ranch, the weather, the books Zara had been reading in her spare time. After they finished, Sam leaned back against the trunk of the juniper, his hat tipped forward slightly to shade his eyes. "So, tell me something I don't know about Zara Galloway." She considered the question, drawing her knees up and wrapping her arms around them. "I used to want to be a writer," she confessed. "I filled notebooks with stories when I was younger." "What kind of stories?" he asked, interested. "Adventures mostly. Girls having grand journeys, discovering new places." She smiled at the memory. "My father encouraged it. My mother worried it filled my head with impractical ideas." "And was she right?" "Perhaps," Zara acknowledged with a small laugh. "I did end up traveling west on my own after all." "Seems to me that takes a certain courage," Sam observed. "Most people stay where it's familiar, even if they are unhappy." "Or desperate," Zara added, thinking of the circumstances that had driven her west. "Or that," Sam agreed. He studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "What about now? Do you still write stories?" "No," she said softly, "not for a long time." "Why not?" The question was gentle but direct, and Zara found herself answering honestly. "Life became complicated. After my parents died, there wasn't time for stories, just survival." Sam nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Sometimes we set pieces of ourselves aside to get through hard times. Doesn't mean they're gone forever." The simple wisdom of his observation struck a chord in Zara. "Perhaps you're right." They fell into companionable silence, listening to the breeze rustling through the leaves and the distant call of birds. The afternoon light softened, casting a golden glow over the landscape. "We should head back soon," Sam said eventually, though he made no move to rise. "Yes," Zara agreed, equally reluctant to end the peaceful interlude. Sam turned to look at her, his expression suddenly more serious. "I'm glad you came here, Zara. To the ranch, I mean." "So am I," she replied, holding his gaze. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition, perhaps, of feelings growing beyond friendship. Sam's eyes dropped briefly to her lips, then back to her eyes, a question in them. Zara felt her heart quicken, but before either could act on the unspoken impulse, a distant roll of thunder broke the spell. Sam glanced up at the sky, where clouds were beginning to gather on the western horizon. "Summer storm coming. We'd better get back." They packed up quickly and mounted their horses, riding at a faster pace than before. The wind picked up as they descended, carrying the scent of rain. By the time the ranch house came into view, dark clouds had overtaken the sky, and the first heavy drops began to fall. They made a dash for the barn, leading the horses inside just as the downpour began in earnest. The sound of rain hammering on the wooden roof filled the space as they unsaddled the horses and rubbed them down. "Perfect timing," Sam said with a grin, water dripping from his hat. "Another 10 minutes and we'd have been soaked through." Zara laughed, brushing droplets from her skirt. "It was worth it. Thank you for taking me there." Sam finished with his horse and came to help her with Daisy's saddle. They worked together in the dim light of the barn, their hands occasionally brushing, each contact sending a small thrill through Zara. When the horses were settled, they stood facing each other in the narrow aisle between the stalls. "We should make a run for the house," Sam said, but he didn't move. "Yes," Zara agreed, equally stationary, in the close confines of the barn, with the rain creating a curtain of privacy around them. The tension that had been building over weeks seemed to crystallize. Sam reached out slowly, giving her every chance to step back, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Zara," he said, her name almost a question. Instead of answering with words, Zara found herself leaning forward, closing the small distance between them. Their lips met tentatively at first, then with growing certainty. Sam's hand came up to cup her cheek, gentle as always, while Zara's fingers curled into the front of his shirt. When they finally drew apart, Sam's eyes searched hers, a mixture of wonder and concern in them. "I didn't plan that," he said softly. "Neither did I," Zara admitted, her heart racing. "But I'm not sorry." A slow smile spread across his face. "Neither am I." The rain continued to pour outside, but neither was in any hurry to leave the sanctuary they had found in each other's arms. For this moment, at least, the complications of the world beyond the barn could wait. The summer storm marked a turning point. Though nothing was said explicitly, the kiss in the barn changed the dynamics between Sam and Zara, adding a new layer to their evening conversations. Their shared glances across the dinner table, their occasional touches as they passed each other in the doorway. Rebecca observed the shift with quiet approval, though she maintained a discreet silence on the matter. Instead, she began finding reasons to leave them alone together, errands in town that required her presence, headaches that sent her to bed early, mending that needed to be done in another room. One evening in early July, as Sam and Zara sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, he reached over and took her hand. "I've been thinking," he said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "A dangerous pastime," Zara teased gently. He smiled. "Maybe so." He was quiet for a moment, then continued, "You mentioned wanting to teach again. I talked to some of the neighboring ranchers. The Petersons, the Johnsons, and the Martinses all have children old enough for schooling. They seemed interested in the idea of lessons, maybe 2 or 3 days a week." Zara straightened in her chair, excitement coursing through her. "Truly," Sam nodded. "We could fix up the old storage building by the creek. It's not being used for much, and with some work it could make a decent schoolroom." "Sam, that's—" Zara was momentarily lost for words. "That's incredibly thoughtful. You're a teacher," he said simply. "You should teach." The matter-of-fact way he supported her dreams without question or condition touched Zara deeply. She leaned over and kissed him softly. "Thank you." His eyes, warm in the fading light, held hers. "There's something else I've been thinking about," he said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "What's that?" Zara asked, suddenly aware of a tension in him. Sam took a deep breath. "I know it hasn't been long, just a couple of months since you came here. And I understand if you think it's too soon, or if your plans don't include." He paused, seemingly gathering his thoughts. "What I'm trying to say, not very well, is that I care for you, Zara, more than I expected to. More than I thought possible after knowing someone such a short time." Zara's heart began to race as she realized where his words might be leading. "I care for you too, Sam." Encouraged, he continued, "I don't want to presume anything. You came here because you needed a place to stay, not because you were looking for this." He gestured between them. "But I find myself hoping that you might consider making your stay here permanent, not as our helper but as—" He swallowed visibly. "As my wife." Though she had begun to sense his feelings matched her own, the actual proposal still took Zara's breath away. "Sam." "You don't need to answer now," he said quickly. "I know it's sudden. I just wanted you to know where I stand, what I hope for." Zara looked at him, this good, honest man who had offered his hand when she had nowhere to go, who had opened his home and now his heart to her. In the past months, she had come to admire his quiet strength, his unassuming kindness, his deep connection to the land he tended. She had also, almost without realizing it, fallen in love with him. "I don't need time," she said softly. "I know my heart, Sam. Yes, I'll marry you." The joy that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He leaned forward, cupping her face in his hands as if she were something infinitely precious, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her eyes sting with happy tears. When they finally parted, breathless and smiling, Sam reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. "I've been carrying this around for a week, waiting for the courage to ask." He opened his palm to reveal a simple gold band with a small pearl set in the center. "It was my mother's. I'd be honored if you'd wear it." "It's beautiful," Zara whispered as he slipped it onto her finger. The ring was slightly loose, but that could be adjusted. What mattered was what it represented: a promise, a future, a home. As darkness settled fully around them, they remained on the porch, planning their life together: the small wedding they would have at the ranch, the schoolroom they would build, the future they would forge side by side. It was a future neither could have imagined that day in Clifton when she stood in the street with nowhere to go, and he had offered his hand. "Come with me," he had said then, a simple invitation that had changed everything. Now, sitting beside him with his ring on her finger and his love warming her heart, Zara knew she had found not just shelter, but belonging. The news of their engagement was met with Rebecca's wholehearted approval. "It's about time Samuel found someone worthy of him," she declared, embracing Zara with uncharacteristic emotion. "And I couldn't have chosen better myself." Plans for a September wedding began to take shape, with Rebecca throwing herself into the preparations with surprising enthusiasm. Letters were sent to neighboring ranches, announcing both the upcoming nuptials and Zara's plans to begin teaching their children. July melted into August, bringing with it the most intense heat of the summer. Work on the ranch continued: cattle to tend, horses to train, gardens to harvest, but now there was also the conversion of the old storage building into a schoolroom. Sam and Joe Martinez worked on it in the evenings, replacing broken windows, building simple desks and benches, while Zara gathered what teaching materials she could find. One sweltering afternoon, as Zara was helping Rebecca preserve peaches from their small orchard, the older woman broached a subject they had not yet discussed. "Have you and Samuel talked about children?" she asked, carefully placing sliced peaches into a jar. Zara felt her cheeks warm, though it had nothing to do with the heat of the kitchen. "Briefly," she admitted. "We both want them when the time comes." Rebecca nodded approvingly. "This place needs children, has for a long time." She glanced at Zara, her expression softening. "You'll be a good mother. You have patience and kindness." "Thank you," Zara said, touched by the assessment. "I hope so. My mother used to say that the true measure of a ranch isn't the size of its herd or the strength of its fences, but the laughter of its children." Rebecca sealed another jar with practiced movements. "This land has been too quiet since our parents passed." The image of children running across the ranch, playing in the creek, learning in the schoolroom she was creating, it filled Zara with a profound sense of rightness. This was what she wanted, what she had perhaps been seeking without knowing it. Not just a place to belong, but a place to nurture, to build, to love. As August progressed, the days fell into a pattern of work interspersed with wedding preparations and the occasional stolen moment with Sam. Their evening conversations on the porch continued, but now they were filled with plans and dreams for their shared future. Sometimes they would ride out together to the plateau he had shown her, their special place that offered perspective and privacy. It was during one such ride, about 3 weeks before their wedding date, that they encountered unexpected visitors. They were returning to the ranch when they spotted dust rising from the main road. Riders approaching, moving fast. Sam's hand instinctively went to the rifle in his saddle holster. "Stay behind me," he instructed, his expression grave. They watched from the cover of a small grove of trees as the riders came into view: 4 men, hard-looking, pushing their horses at a pace that spoke of urgency rather than leisure. "Trouble." Zara asked quietly, recognizing the tension in Sam's posture. Maybe, he replied, eyes narrowed. Don't recognize them, but they're heading straight for the ranch. Without further discussion, they urged their horses forward, taking a route that would intercept the riders before they reached the ranch house where Rebecca was alone. Sam kept Zara slightly behind him as they approached the main road. The riders pulled up short when they saw Sam and Zara blocking their path. Up close, they looked even more menacing, unshaven, dust-covered, with hard eyes that assessed Sam's rifle and Zara's presence with calculating interest. "Afternoon," the lead rider said, his voice carrying a false friendliness that set Zara's nerves on edge. "This the Irwin place?" "It is," Sam replied evenly. "I'm Samuel Irwin. What's your business here?" The man smiled, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "Name's Maddox. These are my associates Carter, Wilkes, and Dahlan. We're looking for work. Heard you might be hiring." Sam's expression remained neutral, but Zara could sense his skepticism. "Not hiring at present. Ranch is small, family-run. But the Peterson place about 20 miles east might be looking for hands." Maddox's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's so. Shame. We were set on this area." His gaze shifted to Zara, lingering in a way that made her skin crawl. "Pretty country. Pretty company, too." Sam shifted slightly, his body language unmistakable. "Like I said, no work here. Peterson's is your best bet. Good day to you." For a tense moment, it seemed Maddox might press the issue. The other men were watching their leader, hands casually near their holstered guns. Then Maddox shrugged, the gesture too elaborate to be genuine. "Well, can't blame a man for trying. We'll head on to this Peterson place." He tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Madam, sir." The four men turned their horses and rode off in the direction Sam had indicated. Only when they were well out of sight did Sam relax his grip on his rifle. "You don't believe they're looking for work?" Zara stated, not a question. "No," Sam replied grimly. "Those aren't ranch hands. The way they sit their horses, the way they're armed, they're trouble of some kind. Probably running from something. Should we warn the Petersons? We'll send Joe over once we get back. And I'll ride to town tomorrow. Let Sheriff Davis know we've got strangers in the area." He glanced at Zara, concern evident in his features. "I want you and Rebecca to be extra cautious until we know they've moved on. No riding out alone. Keep the doors locked at night." The encounter cast a shadow over what had been a perfect day. As they rode back to the ranch, Zara found herself scanning the horizon, suddenly aware of the vulnerability of their isolated location. The Irwin Ranch had come to feel like the safest place in the world to her. But now she was reminded that safety was often an illusion, especially in this still wild territory. When they reached the house and explained the situation to Rebecca, her reaction was characteristically practical. "I'll get the shotgun from the storeroom," she said, already moving toward the door. "And we should bring in extra water in case we need to stay close to the house for a few days." That night, despite Sam's reassurances and the precautions they had taken, Zara found it difficult to sleep. The encounter with Maddox and his men had stirred memories of vulnerability, of standing in the street in Clifton with nowhere to go. She had found safety and love here at the ranch, built the beginnings of a new life. The idea of a threat to that newfound security made her chest tight with anxiety. She was still awake when a soft knock came at her door. Opening it, she found Sam standing in the hallway, concern etched on his features. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked quietly. Zara shook her head. "I keep thinking about those men. May I come in?" "Just to talk," he added quickly, ever respectful of her reputation despite their engagement. She stepped back, allowing him into the small room. He took the chair while she sat on the edge of the bed, a proper distance between them despite the intimacy of the late-night conversation. "I'm sorry about today," Sam said. "I didn't mean to frighten you." "You didn't," Zara assured him. "Or rather, you were right to be cautious. I've learned enough about this territory to know that danger is real." Sam nodded, his expression solemn in the lamplight. "I've always tried to make this ranch a safe place. For Rebecca, for the workers, for the animals in our care." He looked directly at Zara, his gaze intense. "For you, especially for you, I know," she said softly. "And you have. One encounter with strangers doesn't change that." "Still," he persisted, "I'll ride to town first thing tomorrow. Talk to the sheriff, maybe gather some information about who these men might be." Zara studied him, reading the tension in his shoulders, the determination in his jaw. This protective instinct was part of who he was, a man who took responsibility seriously, who considered the welfare of others his personal charge. It was one of the qualities that had drawn her to him, yet she sensed there was something deeper troubling him tonight. "What is it, Sam?" "There's something you're not saying." He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze dropping to his hands. "When I saw the way that man looked at you today, I've never wanted to hurt someone so badly." He looked up, his expression pained. "That's not who I want to be. Not the kind of husband I want to be for you." Zara moved from the bed to kneel beside his chair, taking his hands in hers. "You're a protector, Sam. That's not something to be ashamed of. There's a line between protecting and—" he struggled for the word. "Possessing. I never want to cross it. You're not something to be owned or controlled. You're my partner, my equal." The depth of his consideration, even in his fear, moved Zara profoundly. She reached up to touch his cheek, feeling the stubble beneath her fingertips. "And that, Samuel Irwin, is exactly why I love you, why I trust you, why I can't wait to be your wife." The tension in his face eased slightly as he turned his head to press a kiss to her palm. "3 more weeks," he murmured. "3 more weeks," she confirmed with a small smile. "Now go get some rest. Morning comes early on a ranch, as someone keeps reminding me." He chuckled, rising from the chair. At the doorway he paused, looking back at her with an expression that made her heart skip. "Good night, Zara. Lock the door behind me." "I will," she promised. "Be safe tomorrow." After he left, Zara did as he asked, turning the key in the lock. Despite the lingering concern about the strangers, she felt calmer now. Whatever challenges came, they would face them together. That certainty allowed her to finally find sleep, dreaming not of danger but of the life they were building, stone by stone, day by day. True to his word, Sam rode out at first light the next morning, heading for Clifton to speak with the sheriff. Rebecca and Zara maintained vigilance at the ranch, going about their daily tasks with rifles nearby. Joe Martinez came by midday, reporting that he had warned the Petersons and other neighboring ranches about the suspicious riders. "No one has seen them," Joe said as they stood in the yard. "Perhaps they have moved on." "Let's hope so," Rebecca replied, though she didn't sound convinced. The day passed without incident, and by late afternoon they saw Sam returning, accompanied by another rider, Sheriff Davis, a stocky man with a salt and pepper beard, and the weathered face of someone who had seen his share of troubles. Over coffee at the kitchen table, the sheriff shared what he knew. "Those men match the description of a group that robbed a bank in Tucson 2 weeks ago, killed a teller. There's wanted posters out for them." "Are they still in the area?" Rebecca asked, her expression grave. "Hard to say," Davis replied. "They were seen near Safford 3 days ago, heading this way. But if they're smart, they'll keep moving, try to cross into New Mexico territory. Or they might look for a place to lie low until the pursuit cools," Sam suggested. "There's plenty of isolated spots in these hills." The sheriff nodded grimly. "That's my concern. I've got men patrolling the main roads, but we can't cover everything. Best you folks stay alert." He looked at each of them in turn. "Don't take chances. These men are desperate and dangerous." After the sheriff departed, promising to check back in a few days, an uneasy quiet settled over the ranch. The happy anticipation of the wedding was temporarily overshadowed by the potential threat lurking in the surrounding wilderness. Days passed without further sign of Maddox and his gang. Gradually, the routine of ranch life reasserted itself. Though they maintained extra vigilance, doors locked at night, rifles close at hand, no one venturing far from the house alone. Work continued on the schoolroom, with Sam and Joe always working together now, keeping watch while they labored. A week after the encounter with the riders, Sam and Zara sat on the porch after dinner, the evening ritual that had become precious to them both. The sunset was particularly spectacular, the sky ablaze with color, as if to remind them of the beauty that persisted even in uncertain times. "The schoolroom is nearly finished," Sam said, his arm resting comfortably around Zara's shoulders. "Just needs the blackboard mounted and some shelves for books." "It's coming together beautifully," Zara replied, leaning into his embrace. "I can hardly believe I'll be teaching again in just a few weeks." The children are excited too. Maria says little Alina talks of nothing else but going to real school. Zara smiled at the thought of Joe and Maria's 5-year-old daughter, a bright-eyed child who had visited the ranch several times with her father. "She'll be a good student, curious and eager." They sat in companionable silence, watching as the brilliant colors of sunset gradually faded into the deeper blue of twilight. The first stars were just becoming visible when Sam spoke again, his tone more serious. "I've been thinking about the wedding," he said. "Given the situation with Maddox and his gang still out there somewhere, maybe we should postpone, just until we're sure it's safe." Zara turned to look at him, surprised. "Postpone, but everything is arranged, the guests invited, the food planned." "I know," he acknowledged, his expression troubled. "But I can't stop thinking about the risk. Having all those people here, everyone distracted with celebration. It would be an opportunity for them if they're still in the area." Though part of her wanted to protest, to insist that nothing should delay their happiness, Zara understood his concern. It was the same protective instinct that had troubled him that night in her room, the drive to keep safe those he loved, even at cost to himself. "If you think it's best to wait, then we'll wait," she said finally. "Our love won't change whether we marry next week or next month." The relief in his eyes was obvious. "Thank you for understanding," he said, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips. "Once the sheriff confirms those men have left the territory, we'll have the wedding we've planned. I promise." Zara nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. She had been looking forward to becoming Sam's wife, to officially beginning their life together. But she also knew that safety had to come first, especially with guests including children expected at the celebration. "We'll send word to everyone tomorrow," she said practically. "Explain that due to circumstances beyond our control, the date is being changed." "I'm sorry," Sam said softly. "This isn't how I wanted things to be." Zara leaned in to kiss him gently. "We have our whole lives ahead of us, Sam. A few more weeks of waiting won't change that." The next morning, they began the process of notifying their guests about the postponement. Joe offered to carry messages to the neighboring ranches, while Sam would ride into town to send telegrams to those farther away. Zara composed the notes, keeping the explanation vague but suggesting a new date in October, when they hoped the situation would be resolved. Rebecca, practical as always, began replanning the food preparations. "The preserves will keep," she noted as they worked in the kitchen. "And we can freeze the cake. It's just as well gives us more time to finish your dress properly." Zara appreciated the older woman's matter-of-fact approach, which helped soothe her own disappointment. "You're right, and the weather will be cooler in October." They were discussing the menu when Joe arrived, looking unusually serious. "Samuel," he called from the doorway. "A moment, please." Sam joined him outside while Zara and Rebecca exchanged concerned glances. Through the window, they could see the men in serious conversation, Joe gesturing toward the hills to the west. After a few minutes, Sam came back inside, his expression grim. "Joe saw smoke coming from Miller's old cabin," he explained. "Nobody's supposed to be up there. Miller left for California months ago." "You think it's them?" Rebecca asked, immediately understanding the implication. Sam nodded. "Could be. It's isolated, hard to find unless you know the area." "Good place to hide." He turned to Joe. "How much smoke?" "Small," Joe replied, "just from the chimney, like someone trying not to be noticed." Sam's jaw tightened as he considered. "All right, Joe, ride to town as fast as you can. Get Sheriff Davis. Tell him what you saw and that I'm going to check it out." He held up a hand as both women began to protest. "Just to observe from a distance. I won't engage them, but we need to know for sure if it's Maddox and his men." Zara felt fear clutch at her heart. "Sam, please don't go alone. Wait for the sheriff. By the time Joe gets to town and they ride back, it could be dark," Sam reasoned. "I know these hills better than anyone. I'll just get close enough to confirm if it's them, then fall back and wait for Davis." Rebecca spoke up, her voice firm. "Samuel, this is foolishness. Those men are killers. At least take Zara's rifle as well as your own." To Zara's surprise, Sam didn't argue with his sister's suggestion. "Good idea. 2 guns are better than 1. He turned to Zara, his expression softening. "I'll be careful, I promise." Though every instinct screamed at her to stop him, Zara understood that this was part of who Sam was, a man who took responsibility for protecting his home, his family, his neighbors. It was one of the qualities she loved in him, even as it terrified her now. "Promise me you won't take unnecessary risks," she said, holding his gaze intently. "Just observe, then retreat. Let the sheriff handle the rest." "I promise," Sam replied, sealing the vow with a quick, fierce kiss. While Joe saddled his horse for the ride to town, Sam prepared for his scouting mission. He dressed in darker clothes that would blend better with the landscape and collected both rifles, checking each carefully before loading them. Zara watched him, trying to keep her fear from showing on her face. Just before he left, Sam took her aside, his expression solemn. "If I'm not back by nightfall, take Rebecca and go to the Martinez place. Stay there until the sheriff comes." "You'll be back," Zara insisted, unwilling to consider the alternative. Sam smiled, touching her cheek gently. "Of course I will. We have a wedding to plan, remember." With that, he mounted his horse and rode out, heading toward the western hills where Miller's abandoned cabin lay hidden in a small canyon. Zara watched until he disappeared from sight, then turned to find Rebecca watching her with understanding in her eyes. "He's smart and he knows the land," the older woman said, coming to stand beside her. "He'll be careful." "I know," Zara replied, though the knot of fear in her stomach remained. "I just wish he didn't have to go at all." "That's what it means to love a man like my brother," Rebecca said softly. "He'll always do what he believes is right, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous." She squeezed Zara's arm gently. "It's why he's worth loving." The hours that followed were among the longest of Zara's life. She and Rebecca tried to maintain their normal routine, but their attention constantly strayed to the western horizon. Joe had left for town, riding fast. If all went well, he would reach Sheriff Davis by mid-afternoon and they might return by early evening. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, Zara's anxiety increased. Sam should have had plenty of time to reach Miller's cabin. observe from a distance, and return. The fact that he hadn't could mean many things, most of them troubling. He might be waiting, keeping watch until the sheriff arrives, Rebecca suggested as they stood on the porch, scanning the landscape. Or he might have gone further back into the hills to ensure he wasn't seen. Yes, Zara agreed, clinging to these rational explanations. That makes sense. But as the shadows lengthened and the sky began to take on the deep orange hues of sunset, a terrible certainty grew in Zara's heart. Something had gone wrong. Sam was in danger or worse. "I'm going after him," she declared suddenly, turning toward the barn. Rebecca grabbed her arm. "Zara, no, Samuel would want you safe here." "And I want him safe too," Zara replied, gently but firmly removing the older woman's hand. "I can't just wait here, Rebecca, I can't." Something in her voice, the determination, the fear, the love, seemed to reach Rebecca. After a moment of internal struggle, she nodded. "At least let me come with you." "No," Zara said firmly. "Someone needs to stay here to guide the sheriff when he arrives, show him where Miller's cabin is." She clasped Rebecca's hands. "Please, I need to know you're here safe." Rebecca studied her for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. "Take the shotgun," she said. "And Daisy, she's sure-footed in those hills." She paused, then added softly, "Bring him home, Zara." With Rebecca's help, Zara quickly prepared for the journey. She changed into a split riding skirt that would allow her to ride astride, tucked the shotgun into a saddle holster, and took a moment to study the rough map Rebecca drew of the route to Miller's cabin. "Stay on the deer trail once you reach the first ridge," Rebecca instructed. "It will lead you to the canyon. The cabin is tucked against the north wall, partially hidden by juniper trees." "And if I find him?" Zara asked, voicing the question that had been haunting her. "If he's able, bring him home. If not—" Rebecca paused, her expression grave. "If not, come back for help. Don't try to be a hero." She squeezed Zara's hand. "One reckless Irwin in the family is enough." With those parting words and a quick embrace, Zara mounted Daisy and set off toward the western hills, her heart pounding with fear and determination. The sun was now touching the mountain tops, casting long shadows across the landscape. She would have perhaps an hour of decent light, then dusk, then darkness. As she rode, Zara prayed as she had never prayed before, for Sam's safety, for guidance, for the courage to face whatever lay ahead. The gentle school teacher who had once stood trembling in the street of Clifton was gone. In her place rode a woman determined to protect what she loved, whatever the cost. The landscape grew more rugged as Zara followed the route Rebecca had described. Daisy, true to her training, picked her way carefully along the narrow trail that wound up into the hills. The sun had now disappeared behind the mountains, though its light still colored the sky in shades of pink and gold. As she reached the first ridge, Zara paused to get her bearings. Below, she could see the ranch house in the distance, a small oasis of civilization in the vast wilderness. Ahead, the trail continued into increasingly dense vegetation: juniper, scrub oak, and occasional pine. She urged Daisy forward, moving more cautiously now. If Maddox and his men were indeed at Miller's cabin, she needed to approach with extreme care. The shotgun was reassuring against her leg, but Zara hoped desperately she wouldn't have to use it. The trail descended into a narrow canyon, just as Rebecca had described. Zara dismounted, leading Daisy by the reins to minimize noise. The light was fading rapidly now, the canyon already filled with shadows. She strained her eyes, searching for any sign of the cabin or, more importantly, of Sam. A faint whicker from ahead made her freeze. Horse. Not Daisy, another horse, responding to her presence. Zara tied Daisy to a tree and crept forward on foot, the shotgun now in her hands. Through the gathering darkness, She could make out a shape tethered to a juniper tree, a horse she recognized immediately as Penny, Sam's mare. The animal seemed agitated, pulling at her tether and tossing her head. Zara approached cautiously, speaking in soft tones to calm the horse. "Easy, girl, it's just me. Where's Sam? Where is he?" Penny calmed somewhat at the familiar voice, allowing Zara to stroke her neck. There was no sign of Sam, but the presence of his horse confirmed her worst fears. He had reached the cabin, but had not returned. Moving with even greater caution, Zara continued forward. Through the trees, she could now make out the dim outline of Miller's cabin, a small, rough structure built against the canyon wall. A faint light flickered through the single window, suggesting a fire or lamp within. Crouching behind a boulder, Zara assessed the situation. The cabin had only one visible door and the single window. If Sam was inside, held captive or worse, she would need to be extremely careful in her approach. The sheriff and his men could be hours away still, and darkness was falling rapidly. As she weighed her options, a sound from the cabin made her blood run cold, a cry of pain, quickly muffled but unmistakably Sam's voice. Without conscious thought, Zara raised the shotgun, her teacher's hand suddenly steady as stone as she aimed at the cabin door. But reason quickly reasserted itself. Rushing in would likely get both her and Sam killed. She needed information first: how many men were inside, where exactly Sam was, what condition he was in. Keeping low, Zara circled toward the side of the cabin, moving silently through the underbrush until she reached the window. It was set high in the wall, but a fallen log nearby provided enough height for her to peer inside if she stood on it. With extreme caution, Zara positioned herself on the log and raised her head just enough to see through a corner of the grimy window. The interior of the cabin was dimly lit by a small fire in the hearth and a single oil lamp on the table. Through the dirty glass, she could make out 4 figures, 3 standing, 1 seated. Her heart lurched as she recognized Sam, tied to a chair in the center of the room. His face was bruised, a trail of blood running from his temple down his cheek, but he was conscious, his eyes alert and defiant. Standing before him was Maddox, his back to the window. The other 2 men, Carter and Wilkes, she presumed flanked Sam, one holding a rifle. Zara strained to hear their conversation through the closed window, catching only fragments. "Last time, Irwin," Maddox was saying. "Where's the patrol?" "I told you," Sam's voice, though strained, was steady. "I don't know what the sheriff's plans are." A sharp blow from Maddox made Sam's head snap back, and Zara had to bite her lip to keep from crying out. Her hands tightened on the shotgun as rage flooded through her. "You expect me to believe you rode up here alone with no backup?" Maddox demanded. "You must think I'm stupid." "Wouldn't dream of it," Sam replied, the sarcasm in his voice earning him another blow. Zara slipped down from her perch, mind racing. There were 3 armed men inside, and Sam was bound and injured. The odds were impossible, yet she couldn't simply wait for help that might come too late. She needed a plan, something to even the odds or create enough confusion for Sam to get free. As she crouched in the shadows, considering her options, an idea began to form. It was desperate and dangerous, but it might just work. Moving quickly but quietly, she returned to where Daisy and Penny were tethered. From Sam's saddlebag, she retrieved his spare ammunition and a small tin of matches. Then she untied both horses, leading them a short distance away before removing their bridles. With gentle slaps to their rumps, she sent them galloping off down the canyon, creating a thunderous noise in the quiet evening. As she had hoped, the commotion brought an immediate response from within the cabin. The door flew open, and one of the men, Carter, she thought, stepped out, rifle raised. "What the hell was that?" he called back over his shoulder. Horses, came Maddox's reply. Check it out. Could be the law. Carter moved away from the cabin, following the sound of retreating hoofbeats, while Zara circled back toward the rear of the structure. There, as she had hoped, she found a small stack of firewood and, more importantly, a pile of dry brush and pine needles that had accumulated against the log wall. Working quickly, Zara arranged the most flammable materials into a loose pile against the back of the cabin, away from the door but where the smoke would quickly fill the interior. Using one of the matches, she set it alight, then retreated to a position with a clear view of the front door, shotgun ready. The fire caught quickly, the dry wood and brush sending up a plume of smoke that began to seep into the cabin through the chinks in the log walls. It wouldn't burn the cabin down immediately, the logs were too solid for that, but it would create smoke and confusion, forcing the men to exit through the front door. Inside, she heard the first shouts of alarm. Fire! The back wall's burning! Put it out! Maddox's voice. Too much smoke, can't breathe. Another voice, presumably Wilkes. The door burst open and Wilkes stumbled out, coughing and waving his hands in front of his face. As he emerged, Zara stepped forward from the shadows, shotgun leveled at his chest. Drop your gun, she commanded, her voice surprisingly steady. Hands where I can see them. Wilkes froze, shock evident on his face as he found himself confronted by a determined woman with a shotgun. After a moment's hesitation, he slowly lowered his pistol to the ground. Maddox. He called back toward the cabin. We got trouble out here, more than you know, Zara replied, her finger tightening on the trigger. Tell them to send Sam out. Now. Before Wilkes could respond, Maddox appeared in the doorway, dragging a still-bound Sam with him, a gun pressed to his temple. Through the smoke billowing from the cabin, his expression was one of fury and disbelief. Well, he drawled, taking in the scene before him. Irwin's got himself a guardian angel. His eyes narrowed as he recognized Zara. The pretty lady from the road should have known. Let him go, Zara demanded, the shotgun now aimed at Maddox. Your friend Carter is gone after the horses. It's just the two of you now, and help is on the way. Maddox's laugh was cold. You think I'm scared of a schoolmarm with a shotgun? I've killed men a lot more threatening than you, sweetheart. Then you've never met a woman protecting what she loves, Zara replied, her voice like steel. She cocked the shotgun, the sound sharp in the tense silence. I won't ask again. Let him go. For a long moment, no one moved. Sam's eyes, meeting Zara's over the barrel of her shotgun, held a mixture of fear for her safety and fierce pride. Maddox's grip on him tightened, the gun pressing harder against his temple. Here's what's going to happen, Maddox said finally. You're going to put that shotgun down and we're all going to take a nice walk down to your ranch. Your man here says there's horses and supplies we can use. Once we're ready to ride, we'll let him go. Maybe. That's not happening, Zara replied, her aim unwavering. The sheriff is on his way right now with a posse. This canyon will be surrounded within the hour. Your only chance is to surrender. Something in her tone, the absolute certainty, perhaps made Maddox hesitate. His eyes darted to the shadows around them, as if expecting to see armed men emerging at any moment. Taking advantage of that moment of distraction, Sam suddenly drove his elbow backward into Maddox's stomach with all the strength he could muster. The outlaw doubled over, his grip loosening just enough for Sam to twist away from the gun at his temple. Zara, now, Sam shouted as he threw himself to the ground. Without hesitation, Zara fired the shotgun, aiming just above where Maddox stood. The blast echoed through the canyon, and the outlaw staggered backward, struck in the shoulder rather than the chest, not a killing shot, but enough to drop him to his knees, his gun falling from suddenly nerveless fingers. Before Wilkes could recover from his shock and dive for his discarded weapon, Zara had the shotgun trained on him again. "Don't," she warned, and something in her eyes must have convinced him, for he raised his hands in surrender. Moving quickly, Zara approached Sam, keeping the shotgun aimed at the wounded Maddox. Using a knife from her boot, a practical addition Rebecca had insisted upon, she cut the ropes binding Sam to the chair. "Are you all right?" she asked urgently, helping him to his feet. "I am now," he replied, grimacing in pain but standing on his own. He quickly retrieved Maddox's fallen pistol, training it on the outlaw who was clutching his bleeding shoulder and cursing. "Get their guns, Zara, and something to bind them." Working together, they disarmed both men and bound them securely with rope from the cabin. The fire Zara had set was still smoldering, but the immediate danger had passed. Sam extinguished it with water from a barrel while Zara kept watch over their prisoners. "Carter will be back soon," Sam said as they secured the outlaws to a tree outside the cabin. "And we don't know where Dahlin is. We need to get you back to the ranch," Zara insisted, noting the blood still seeping from the wound on his temple and the way he favored his right side. "You're hurt." Sam shook his head. "Can't risk it. Not with Carter and Dahlin still out there. We need to hold position here until the sheriff arrives." He looked at her with a mixture of concern and admiration. "Though I still can't believe you came after me. What were you thinking?" "That I wasn't going to lose you," Zara replied simply. "Not when we've just found each other." The raw honesty in her voice seemed to strike Sam deeply. He reached out to touch her face, his eyes filled with emotion. "You could have been killed, so could you?" she countered. "Yet here we are, both alive thanks to a schoolteacher with a shotgun and a cowboy too stubborn to tell outlaws what they want to know." Despite the gravity of their situation, Sam couldn't help but smile. "We make quite a pair, don't we?" "We do," Zara agreed, returning his smile before reality reasserted itself. "Now, what's our plan until the sheriff arrives?" They decided to take shelter in the cabin, barricading the door and positioning themselves to cover both the entrance and the window. Sam's injuries, though painful, weren't life-threatening. A cut on his temple, bruised ribs, and various lesser hurts from the beating he had received. As they waited, keeping watch over their prisoners and the surrounding darkness, Sam recounted what had happened. He had observed the cabin from a distance, confirming Maddox and his gang were inside. But as he was retreating to meet the sheriff, he had literally bumped into Dahlin returning from hunting. The outlaw had gotten the drop on him, disarming him before he could react. "They wanted to know about the sheriff's patrols, where they were focusing their search," Sam explained. "I played dumb, but Maddox was getting impatient. Another hour and—" He didn't need to finish the thought. "Well, he won't be hurting anyone else tonight," Zara said, glancing out the window at the secured outlaws. Time passed slowly as they maintained their vigil. Sam insisted Zara rest while he kept watch, but she refused to leave his side. Instead, they sat together against the wall, the shotgun across her lap, his arm around her shoulders, drawing comfort and strength from each other's presence. "When we first met," Sam said quietly after a long silence, "that day in Clifton when you were standing in the street, I never imagined we'd end up here." "Fighting outlaws together?" Zara asked with a small smile. "Finding someone I couldn't bear to lose," he replied, his voice low and serious. "Someone brave enough to ride into danger for me." Zara turned to face him, mindful of his injuries. "I love you, Samuel Irwin. For the rest of my days, I will always come for you. Always." In response, he kissed her gently but with a depth of feeling that made words unnecessary. They were still embracing when the sound of approaching horses broke the stillness of the night. Sam was on his feet instantly, gun ready, while Zara took position at the window. After a tense moment, they heard a welcome voice calling from the darkness. "Irwin, Miss Galloway, it's Sheriff Davis." Relief flooded through them as they opened the door to find the sheriff and 6 deputies, along with Joe Martinez, riding into the small clearing. In the chaos of explanations and the securing of prisoners, including Carter, whom the posse had intercepted trying to return to the cabin, one fact became clear. Dahlin was still unaccounted for. "We'll find him," Sheriff Davis assured them as his men prepared to transport Maddox, Wilkes, and Carter back to Clifton. "He won't get far, not with 3 of his gang captured and the whole territory alerted." He turned to Zara, eyeing the shotgun she still held with newfound respect. "Madam, that was some quick thinking with the fire. Not many would have had the courage to face these men down." "I did what was necessary," Zara replied simply. "That she did," Sam agreed, his pride evident as he recounted Zara's actions to the assembled men. By the time the full story had been told, the night was well advanced. The sheriff insisted on escorting them back to the ranch, concerned about the still missing Dahlin and Sam's injuries. "Rebecca will be beside herself with worry," Zara realized as they prepared to leave. "Joe rode ahead to let her know you're both safe," Sheriff Davis assured her. "Now let's get you home." The journey back to the ranch was slow, accommodating Sam's condition. One of the deputies had rounded up Penny and Daisy, who had only gone a short distance down the canyon before stopping to graze. By the time they reached the ranch house, dawn was breaking over the eastern horizon. Rebecca met them at the door, her stoic demeanor cracking as she embraced her brother, then Zara, with uncharacteristic emotion. "Thank God you're both safe," she murmured, tears shining in her eyes. The next few hours were a blur of activity, Sam's wounds being cleaned and bandaged, statements given to the sheriff, a hasty meal prepared for everyone. When the lawmen finally departed, promising to post a deputy nearby until Dahlin was captured, exhaustion overcame them all. "You need rest," Rebecca told her brother firmly. "Both of you do. Everything else can wait." For once, Sam didn't argue. The events of the night had taken their toll, and he allowed himself to be led to his room. Before retiring, however, he sought out Zara, finding her in the kitchen where she was putting away the last of the breakfast dishes. "I never properly thanked you," he said, taking her hands in his, "for saving my life." Zara shook her head. "You would have done the same for me." "You did do the same that day in Clifton. You offered your hand when I had nowhere to go." She smiled up at him. "We take care of each other, that's what love is." Sam's expression grew serious. "I've been thinking about the wedding. I don't want to wait until October." "But what about Dahlin?" Zara asked. "He's still out there." "He'll be caught soon enough," Sam replied confidently. "And even if he isn't, I won't let him or anyone put our lives on hold any longer." He brought her hands to his lips, kissing them gently. "Will you marry me next week, Zara Galloway?" "As we originally planned." The answer required no thought at all. "Yes," she said simply. "Next week, tomorrow, whenever you wish. I'm ready to be your wife, Samuel Irwin." The joy that lit his face was all the confirmation Zara needed that they were making the right decision. Whatever dangers still lurked, whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together, the schoolteacher and the cowboy who had offered his hand when she needed it most. The following days passed in a whirlwind of wedding preparations, now accelerated to meet their original date. Word came from Sheriff Davis that there was still no sign of Dahlin, but sightings suggested he had fled north, away from Clifton and the Irwin Ranch. Though they maintained vigilance, life gradually returned to its normal rhythms. Sam recovered quickly from his injuries, his natural vitality reasserting itself as the wedding day approached. Zara divided her time between preparations for the ceremony and putting the finishing touches on the schoolroom, which would welcome its first students the week after the wedding. The night before the ceremony, after Rebecca had retired, Sam and Zara took their customary places on the porch. The evening was mild, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of sage and the distant mountains silhouetted against a sky ablaze with stars. "This time tomorrow, you'll be Mrs. Irwin," Sam said, his voice soft with wonder. "And you'll be stuck with a schoolteacher for a wife," Zara replied with a smile. "Nothing would make me happier." He took her hand, his expression growing more serious. "There's something I've been wanting to give you, something that was my mother's." From his pocket, he withdrew a small velvet pouch. "I've been saving it for the right moment." Curious, Zara accepted the pouch and carefully opened it. Inside was a delicate gold locket on a fine chain. When she opened it, she found a small portrait of a woman with Sam's eyes and Rebecca's determined chin. "Your mother," she said softly. Sam nodded. "She always said it should go to the woman who would be the heart of this ranch after she was gone. That's you, Zara. You've brought life and hope back to this place, to Rebecca, to me." Tears welled in Zara's eyes as she closed the locket. "I'll treasure it always," she promised, turning so he could fasten it around her neck. The weight of it against her skin felt right, a tangible connection to the family she was joining, to the home she had found. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, as if nature itself approved of their union. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, held in the yard of the ranch with the mountains as their backdrop. Joe Martinez served as best man, while Rebecca stood beside Zara. Neighbors from surrounding ranches gathered to witness the union, along with the few friends Zara had made during her time in Clifton. As they spoke their vows, Zara thought of the journey that had brought her to this moment, from the loss of her parents, to standing alone in the street of Clifton, to finding love and purpose on this remote ranch. When Sam slipped the wedding band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, it felt like the completion of a circle, the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Sam's kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of all that lay ahead. As they turned to face their guests, now officially Mr. and Mrs. Samuel Irwin, the cheers and applause that greeted them seemed to echo Zara's own joy. The celebration that followed was joyous and relaxed, with food and music and dancing that continued well into the evening. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the gathering, Sam found Zara where she was chatting with Maria Martinez. "May I steal my wife for a moment?" he asked, the word wife clearly giving him pleasure. With Maria's smiling permission, Sam led Zara away from the festivities, toward the small rise where they could look out over the ranch. In the distance, they could see the schoolhouse, now complete and ready to welcome its first students. "Happy?" Sam asked, slipping his arm around her waist. "Completely," Zara replied, leaning into his embrace. "It's more than I ever dared hope for after being thrown out onto the street," Sam finished when she hesitated. "Yes," she acknowledged. "That day I thought I had lost everything. I never imagined I was actually finding my way home." Sam turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "That's what this ranch is now, your home, our home." He paused, his expression hopeful. "Maybe someday the home of our children." The thought of children, their children, running across these fields, learning in the schoolroom she had created, growing up with the mountains as their playground, filled Zara with a profound sense of rightness. "I would like that very much," she said softly. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they sealed this new dream with a kiss, standing together on the land that would nurture their future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever joys and sorrows the years might bring, they would face them as they had faced everything since that fateful day in Clifton together, hand in hand, finding strength in each other and in the love that had transformed both their lives. Epilogue Spring, 1885. The sound of children's laughter floated through the open windows of the schoolhouse as Zara finished writing the day's assignment on the blackboard. 7 years had passed since that fateful day in Clifton, and the small school she had established on the Irwin Ranch had flourished, growing from 5 students to 15, with children coming from as far as 10 miles away for lessons 3 days a week. Mrs. Irwin, I've finished my sums, announced Elena Martinez, now a poised 12-year-old and one of Zara's most promising students. Let me see, Zara replied, setting down her chalk and moving to the girl's desk. She reviewed Elena's work, nodding in approval. Excellent. You have a real gift for numbers, Elena. The girl beamed at the praise, then glanced toward the window. Is it time yet? Zara smiled, understanding the source of her students' distraction. Almost. You can all pack up your things now. A cheer went up from the assembled children as they hurriedly put away their books and slates. Today was special, the culmination of a project they had been working on for weeks. Outside, in the meadow beside the schoolhouse, tables had been set up for the spring celebration, an event that had become a tradition under Zara's guidance. As the children filed out, Zara took a moment to survey the schoolroom with pride. What had once been a neglected storage building was now a bright, welcoming space, with rows of desks, shelves of books, educational charts on the walls, and even a small piano in the corner, acquired last year after a successful fundraising effort. Ready, Mrs. Irwin? Asked young Thomas Peterson, hovering by the door. Go on ahead, Zara told him with a smile. I'll be right there. After the last child had departed, Zara gathered her own belongings and paused to straighten a row of books. Teaching remained her passion, and the school had become a vital part of the community, bringing families together and providing education that would otherwise have been inaccessible to many of these children. As she stepped outside, shielding her eyes against the bright spring sunlight, Zara's gaze was immediately drawn to the tall figure approaching from the direction of the ranch house. Sam, now 34 but still as handsome as the day they met, carried their 2-year-old son, James, on his shoulders. Beside him walked their daughter, Sarah, a serious 5-year-old with her mother's thoughtful eyes and her father's determined chin. Mama, Sarah called, breaking into a run when she spotted Zara. Is it time for the celebration? Zara knelt to embrace her daughter, breathing in the scent of sunshine and soap that always clung to the child. Almost. Are you ready to recite your poem? Sarah nodded solemnly. I practiced with Aunt Rebecca all morning. She says I've got it perfect. I'm sure you do, Zara assured her, rising as Sam approached with James. School out already? Sam asked, leaning down to kiss her briefly. Or did they all escape when you weren't looking? Very funny, Zara replied, reaching up to take their squirming son. It's the spring celebration, remember, half day. As if I could forget, Sam chuckled. Rebecca's been baking for 3 days straight. Indeed, the tables in the meadow were already laden with food, Rebecca's contribution to the celebration, along with help from Maria Martinez and other ranch wives. The event had grown each year, becoming a beloved community gathering that brought together families from across the region. Da! James demanded, reaching back for his father once he'd received a kiss from his mother. The young master has been helping me with the horses all morning, Sam explained as he reclaimed their son. Haven't you, James? The boy nodded enthusiastically, his dark curls bouncing. Though still a toddler, He already showed the same affinity for horses that his father possessed. "There's Rebecca," Zara said, spotting her sister-in-law directing the placement of a final platter of cookies. Though now in her 50s, Rebecca remained as capable and straightforward as ever, though the years had softened her somewhat, especially where her niece and nephew were concerned. As they walked toward the gathering, Zara took a moment to appreciate the life they had built. The Irwin Ranch had prospered over the years, expanding its operations and improving its stock. The schoolhouse had become a centerpiece of the community, and their family had grown, filled with love and purpose. The final member of Dahlon's gang had been captured within a month of their wedding, removing that shadow from their lives. There had been other challenges, of course droughts, harsh winters, the normal trials of ranch life, but they had faced them together, just as Sam had promised they would. "Penny for your thoughts," Sam said as they joined the gathering, nodding greetings to neighbors and friends. Zara smiled up at him, her heart full. "I was just thinking about how far we've come since that day in Clifton." Understanding lit his eyes. "Best decision I ever made, offering you my hand that day. Best decision I ever made taking it," she replied softly. The spring celebration proceeded with all the joy and community spirit that Zara had envisioned when she first proposed it. The children performed songs and recitations, including Sarah's flawlessly delivered poem about springtime. There were games and food and conversation that lasted well into the afternoon. As the celebration wound down and families began to disperse, Sam found Zara sitting on a blanket under a cottonwood tree, watching as Rebecca helped Sarah make a crown of wildflowers while James napped nearby. "Happy?" Sam asked, sitting beside her the same question he had asked on their wedding day and many times since. "Completely," Zara replied, leaning against his shoulder, "though I've been thinking." "Oh," Sam teased. "Should I be worried?" Zara laughed, then grew more serious. "I've had a letter from the Territorial Education Office. They're establishing a program to help communities build proper schoolhouses, with funding for supplies and even teacher salaries." Sam considered this information. "You're thinking of applying?" "I'm thinking it could help us expand what we've already started," Zara explained. "A larger school, maybe 5 days a week instead of 3, more books, better equipment." She paused, searching his face. "What do you think?" Instead of answering immediately, Sam looked out across the ranch at the thriving operation they had built together, the community they had helped nurture, the family they had created. Then he turned back to her, his expression warm with love and pride. "I think," he said slowly, "that you should write to them tomorrow. Tell them about what you've accomplished here already and what you hope to build." He took her hand, the one that wore his ring, and squeezed it gently. "Whatever you decide to do, I'll support you. Always have, always will." Zara's heart swelled with gratitude for this man who had not only offered his hand when she had nowhere to go, but had continued to offer his support, his respect, and his love through all the years since. "I love you, Samuel Irwin," she said simply. "And I love you, Zara Irwin," he replied, pulling her close for a kiss that still held all the promise of their first. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, casting long shadows across the land they both loved, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From despair to hope, from loneliness to love, from a chance encounter on a dusty street to a life rich with purpose and connection. "Come with me," he had said that day, extending his hand to a woman with nowhere to go. And she had come, finding not just shelter but a home, not just safety but love, not just a new beginning but a lifetime of possibilities. Together, they had built something beautiful on this land beneath the wide Arizona sky, a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone. as enduring as the mountains that watched over them and as boundless as the horizon that had once represented Zara's uncertain future, now transformed into the backdrop of her greatest happiness.